When it comes to horse racing, you can never have too much information. With twinspires, you can place your bets with confidence, whether you use handicapping insights like our Brisnet speed ratings, prime power and past performances, the guidance of our experts' top picks, or just choose a name that catches your eye. Yes! No matter how you pick your horse, bet with twinspires. And now you can race to victory with twinspires tournaments.
Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Racing Roundtable presented by twinspires. Darin Zoccali filling in for Ashley Anderson, who's got herself a little vacation in my backyard in New York City this week, actually. So hope she's enjoying the sights and sounds of the greatest city in the world. Good to be joining you guys, James and Vance. Happy to sit in as we take a look back at what was a very busy weekend of racing across the country. We're going to take a look back at the great racing action at Churchill Downs, including Immersive's comeback race, which probably did not go as planned. I'm sure there'll be comments about the trip, the ride, and the result. Had some really impressive performances at both Monmouth Park and Delaware Oaks and Derby Day. Monmouth Park featured the Haskell preview card, including the Salvatore Mile. We'll take a look there. And we just completed the first day of racing action at Royal Ascot that we will discuss some of the big efforts that came out of there. But let's start with Immersive's comeback. The 2-year-old filly champion came back this past week at Churchill Downs. Guys, she was bet down to very strong favoritism. Obviously did not probably get the trip that the Connections and Brad Cox were hoping for. Kind of left out of there, grabbed a hold, sat behind the speed, then waited for a hole to open, got pushed through there, and at one point almost looked like she kind of ping-ponged off the rail on the far turn. And then she just had to deal with Take Charge Milady, who's been a little bit more seasoned than she has been to start the 3-year-old season, gotten a little bit of a dogfight in a race she might have needed. Take Charge Milady comes out on top. Vance, we'll start with you. Your impressions of Immersive's debut, and are you downgrading her at all off of her first career defeat?
No, not downgrading her whatsoever. You alluded to the tough trip that she had, and you don't always expect that kind of stuff in a 4-horse field, but I think she came out of this race really well. I mean, she, as you can see from that photo there, she barely lost. And have to keep in mind that she hadn't run since November after she won the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies. She only had 6 published works coming into this race, too, and only 1 at 5 furlongs. So this was undoubtedly a race that she needed. And I think it's kind of interesting that Brad Cox, I mean, he's got good cheer in the barn, so she's going to run in the Coaching Club American Oaks in Alabama. And for this filly's next start, I see he's pointing her for the Test Stakes, dropping her back in distance for 7 furlongs. So I think that's an interesting move. I assume that's probably going to serve as some type of a prep, perhaps for the Cotillion in September at Parks, which is 1 1/16. So interesting what he's going to do with this filly going forward. But I expect her to move forward off of this race that she undoubtedly needed. And you know, like as you alluded to, the filly that beat her had some racing experience already this year.
Yeah, it makes you wonder with the cutback to the 7 furlong test if maybe they're going to try to get a path for good cheer to the Breeders' Cup Distaff and want to see if Immersive could possibly be in the filly and mare sprint at 7 furlongs and keep them apart entirely, at least see if that's an option for them. But certainly interesting to see that they're going to keep these two fillies away from each other, at least for the time being. James, your impressions of Immersive's both difficult trip and the narrow defeat to Take Charge Milady?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what Vance was saying. I did not agree though with the ride that Manny Franco gave Immersive. I mean, in a short field like that, just wouldn't like to see him have her like in tight. Take her back and go around if necessary. And if you run second that way, you run second. But, it wasn't a good look, I didn't think, and he was having to check her as well, like in tight going into that turn before he tried to make that move. And, like you described, Darin looked like he was pinballing between that rival and the Anna's Promise and the rail there coming through the turn. But I'll say this about Immersive. She's going to have to keep improving upon that race, but she might be able to given the state of the 3-year-old filly division. The filly that beat her, Take Charge My Lady, I thought she ran a really good second in the Ashland to Lacara, who had everything her own way that day. And Take Charge My Lady was training forwardly for the Kentucky Oaks when, and I believe her next to last scheduled work, she came out of a real sharp move with a foot bruise. And I just think that compromised her preparations. She came out of that race. I mean, McPee got her to the starting gate, but I was 100%. And she came out of that and trained, I thought, forwardly for the Monomoy girl. So at least she was running against, I think, one of the best 3-year-old fillies in that division. Another thing Immersive has going for her is that the division isn't very deep. It's just once you get past Good Cheer, we saw Lacara win the Acorn. There's just not a lot of depth in that division. In fact, outside of Lacara, who ran fifth last year at 16-1 in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies and came back this year and won in the Suncoast, every single other runner in that race, including Immersive, was winless in their first start back this year. Not only Immersive now makes it where we have the top 4 in that race, Vaca with the twist, Outkick, and Scottish Lassie. Those other 3 rivals are 0 for 10 since the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies. Even the 4-1 second choice that was in there that didn't run any good from Japan, American Bikini, she's winless from 4 or 5 starts since then as well. So I just don't think, I think it wasn't a very strong field in the juvenile fillies. Immersive can improve upon her comebacker. I think that's an interesting point. You guys, Vance talked about the test at first, and then Darin, you talked about it as well. Maybe the filly and mare sprint, given that both fillies are owned by Godolphin. But I do think there's a good chance that Immersive will get another shot at 2 turns before we get to the Breeders' Cup at Del Mar.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a bit of a common tale in some years where the 2-year-old form doesn't always develop to 3, and the top 2-year-olds don't always remain the top 3-year-olds. Horses develop at different points. We always forget, from age 2 to age 3, these are still kind of like the akin to teenagers figuring things out. And some horses are going to just develop a little bit later than others. And the ones that peak early and are more precocious sometimes plateau. And it's certainly possible that that's happened with Good Cheer. I mean, the knock on her was her figures were not really getting much better. It's just that nobody else was really stepping up and running any faster than her. And she obviously did not run well at all last week for the Belmont weekend, but in the Acorn. But we'll see what happens the second half of the year. If another 3-year-old filly can jump up and maybe Take Charge Milady, maybe Immersive bounces back off this, maybe Lacara starts to get easy leads in a lot of these races and proves tough. But it's certainly a much more competitive top part of the division, I think, than we thought maybe a couple of weeks ago with Immersive and Take Charge Milady running the way they did 1-2 in this race at Churchill Downs. Well, it wasn't just Immersive's return to the races. There was some really good Mid-Atlantic racing. And James, let's start with you. At Monmouth Park, they had the Haskell Preview Day. It was a rainy, off track, to say the least. But certainly didn't seem like anything dissuaded Bishop's Bay. He showed up again for his 4th win in 5 starts this year.
Yes, and actually, Vance is going to take Bishop's Bay for the Salvatore Mile. I will say, as far as those Monmouth Park Stakes went, I didn't give this to our producer, but that Bracket Buster looked good winning the Pegasus. Now, he did lead wire to wire over a sloppy track, so you can't trust those performances. And I don't know if 1.8 miles is going to be his true distance, because that race was a win and you're in for the Haskell, so he'll just naturally go to the Haskell. If he doesn't run well in the Haskell, Bracket Buster to me is going to be a candidate to cut back for the Al Jerkins Memorial, but let's just see how he does in the next race first. As far as the races, I do want to spotlight the Delaware Derby was offered. I think it was the inaugural Delaware Derby, and on the same card with the Delaware Oaks and a couple of turf stakes of note. And I thought Admiral Dennis really a breakthrough performance in winning that race. Now, this was his first start since the Bluegrass in early April. And I thought the Bluegrass was a perfect example of one issue that has really plagued this colt since he broke his maiden last fall at Churchill Downs. He his first 3 stakes attempts, he just couldn't get out of the gate effectively, in my opinion. No matter how much he was hustled, he was just this big lumbering type, it seemed. And he's a beautiful individual. but he just lacked like any gate speed or early speed. Well, what I loved about the Dueling Grounds Derby is that Brad Cox freshened him 2.5 months for that race, and all of a sudden, I mean, he broke running guys. They went that opening quarter in 23, and the half split was 46-3, and he's like up on the lead, or at least had it early, and then sat a tracking second. And you can just see in the Brisnet Ultimate Pass performances, he got a 104 E1 Briss rating and a triple digit Briss E2 pace rating. Those numbers are completely off the page from his earlier numbers. I think horses, when they start improving and they show improved tactical speed, it's a big positive. That's a sign of real improving form. Now, obviously, Admiral Dennis, beat Barbadian Runner and Kentucky Outlaw. So the waters are going to get a lot deeper moving forward for him. But this is a very encouraging performance to build upon. This is a son of Constitution out of a Union Rags mare. Even if he's not ready for the big guys yet, he could still pick off some of these lucrative 3-year-old prizes that they have out there, like the West Virginia Derby and others, and perhaps like develop into a really good 4-year-old next year. So they're one to keep an eye on off of a 3.25 length win that earned him a 104 Brisnet speed rating, Admiral Dennis.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Good to see him step back up. He was a horse that won his maiden last year at Churchill Downs, caught the eye of some, tailed off a little in the gun runner, came back with a good allowance win. Form has been a bit in and out, but certainly if he could start to string a couple of good races in a row, he could be one to watch. And we have the Indiana Derby on July 5th, and you have like with the Ohio Derby coming up this weekend. You have the Iowa Derby, the West Virginia Derby. There's pretty much a derby for just about every state over the next couple of months. So there'll be no shortage of places for him to select to run at next. We'll see how he develops throughout the summer. Vance, as I mentioned before, Bishop's Bay, the Salvatore Mile, came back with another big effort. He's been rock solid so far this year as he looks to try to maybe ascend on up the ladder in the older horse division a bit.
Yeah, if people might remember him as a 3-year-old who he really held his own through an abbreviated 3-year-old campaign. He ran the champion of 2023, Arcangelo, to a short victory in the Peter Pan, and then came back and was second best to 2 fills in the Ohio Derby. 2 fills went into retirement right afterward, and this horse hit the sidelines afterwards too and did not reappear until November of last year. But trainer Brad Cox has really managed this horse spectacularly through all of his issues that he's had over the last few years. Started 10 times. He has 7 wins. He has 3 second-place finishes. He was the 3-10 favorite in the Salvatore Mile on Saturday over the slop. Obviously didn't have to run nearly his best to win that race very comfortably, but yet again, he showed up, and this is a very nice horse, and I assume he's going to be tested in some tougher races as we move into the summer and into the fall, and he could turn out to be a legitimate Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile contender if he continues his form. So Bishop's Bay, off of this weekend's performance, definitely one to watch in that division.
Yep, couldn't agree more. And looking to see where he shows up next if they take another big step forward. I think he's a horse to watch and definitely consider in some of the bigger races coming up in the late summer and early fall. For me, we talked about the 3-year-old fillies earlier, and another horse that jumped up with another big effort was Fondley. And she's a filly that when you let her get on an easy lead, she's tough. She showed in the Virginia Oaks where I thought she actually ran faster than they went in the Virginia Derby that day with American Promise. And in the Delaware Oaks, they once again just kind of let her go around the track. And it's that same old song, you let a good horse on an easy lead and just kind of coast. You can go quick fractions, but without much pressure, and it's not nearly as exhausting for going moderate fractions with somebody head and head with you. And she's got a high cruising speed. When they let her get out on an easy lead, similar to Lacara, she's really dangerous. And it's going to be very interesting to see the second half of the season and see which of these 3-year-old fillies really steps up. But wherever she goes, her speed is always very dangerous. And when she shows up with an A-plus effort, she's tough, and I'm looking to see where she goes next. I wouldn't be surprised if they cut her back to something like the Test Stakes, because that would be interesting to see her speed at something like 7 furlongs rather than have to go into a race against Good Cheer and others, or go head to head with a Lucara, for example, in a race like the Alabama or the CCA Oaks, if that's where they went. That seems kind of like a foolish plan. So I'll be curious to see where she goes, but her speed makes her tough when she shows up for sure.
I also I agree with your take, and I thought that when she broke her maiden, she broke from the rail that day, and the jockey sort of dropped her back and geared her outside, and just had her in the clear the whole rest of that way, that maiden win. And then the Virginia Oaks, we saw her with the Twinspire. We were down at the Colonial Downs in March, and she looked nervous to me in the paddock. She wasn't like this, like confident looking runner. And she just got another really good, favorable trip on the front end. I think that Kentucky Oaks experience, everything didn't go our way. It was a tough trip that day. That was a hard effort that I think perhaps really benefited from her in terms of just maturing mentally and getting tougher, because that Delaware Oaks had some speed in it, and she really took it to him from the start and looked like a stronger individual, in my mind, for Graham Motion. So she's like growing up in a sense. She's been really lightly raced, and that's a filly on the come in a sense. And as far as Bishop's Bay, I'll just add, I love the way Brad Cox has managed him. He hasn't been in any kind of hurry with them, and he's got all these big races coming later this summer and fall. And that horse is going to be ready for him. He's had a bunch of allowances, listed stakes. He's been well handled in my mind.
Yep, certainly agree with that. Vance, I'd love to hear your thoughts if you have anything on Fondley, where you think she could be a threat the second half of the season.
Yeah, I thought you made a really good point about dropping her back to 7 furlongs for the test, especially after the one-turn Virginia Oaks win at Colonial. Makes all the sense in the world to me, and I think these connections are obviously wanting to enhance her broodmare value, and so why not shoot for a grade 1 now?
Yep, definitely agree. We'll see where they map it out. But the 3-year-old filly division certainly has got some new kids on the block, as they say, in the last couple of weeks for sure. Well, today was the kickoff of the Royal Ascot meeting, day 1, Queen Anne and St. James Palace Day. There was no shortage of star power. And Vance, I guess we have to start with the St. James Palace, which was a unique race that brought together the 3 winners of the 3 different 2,000 guineas this year, which is not something we see. But in the end, there was really no competition, because right now, Field of Gold looks like he could be a budding international superstar. I mean, he didn't just win. He won like a good thing with something left, where maybe just a quick ass, drop the hands, throw across and go. And then from that point on, it was just canter to the wire. And he beat a good field. Henri Matisse ran on well to be second, but was completely overmatched by what looks like I said, just a budding superstar on the international form.
Yeah, and most people kind of expected that performance. He was the 3-5 favorite in the World Pool, and he ran to that, easily beating Henri Matisse, as you mentioned. Ruling Court looked a little anxious and nervous before the race, and it looked like beforehand that he wasn't going to run up to his 2,000 guineas form, where he beat Field of Gold very narrowly. And Field of Gold, after 4, this was his 4th start of the year. Started things off winning the Craven at Newmarket, and then lost the 2,000 guineas. Came back, won the Irish 2,000, and now he's won the St. James's Palace very impressively. And I think a lot of people are going to look at this race and then draw comparisons with the older horses that we saw in the Queen Anne on the first race of the card. You do have to keep in mind, though, that the St. James's Palace was run over the round mile, whereas the Queen Anne was run over the straight mile. They're not quite, 2 races that you can compare very easily. But from all indications to me, when Field of Gold steps up to face older horses next time, I'm sure he's going to be the favorite. We did see an upset in the Queen Anne with Docklands, just narrowly beating the favorite Rosalian. And Rosalian was the only one that really stepped up off of the Lock-Hinge Stakes at Newbury last month, and some of the others in the Queen Anne did not run to their best today. So kudos to Docklands for his signature win there, and Rosalian made some progress after a long layoff. But yeah, I think the older horses in general are going to have a really tough battle on their hands with Field of Gold, probably as soon as the Sussex Stakes at Goodwood late July.
Not only do I think Field of Gold would have won that Queen Anne Stakes in a hand ride, but I think Henry Matisse would have too. As somebody who made the point last fall that was the weakest group of 3-year-old turf milers I had seen perhaps in my lifetime, and was really upset when ruling court slipped in there to cost me the try. I still had a good exacta on the top 2 Americans in there. I was naturally somebody who had some money on Dockwins. He's not one of those 3-year-old turf milers from last year. You can have Oliver Zalian, lead artist, notable speech, Diego Velasquez, and these other 4-year-old turf milers in Europe that you want. I agree wholeheartedly with everything that Vance said about Field of Gold, and I think he'll be tough to beat anywhere he shows up next time.
We'd be remiss to not mention the American runner who's been sold to international interests who ran in this race. Carl Spackler did not place, but I thought he ran well. I mean, he was right there coming down to the final eighth of a mile or so. Just doesn't have the turn of foot that the top flight European runners at this mile distance necessarily have. I guess you could call him a bit one pace through the stretch, but I thought he was far from disgraced. I mean, for being an American horse to go out there and run the way he did in the Queen Anne, I thought he ran fine.
He was tossing his head early too. He was a little bit rank. Now the jockey got him settled down, but was a little bit eager to go right at the break.
Yeah, he appeared to be menacing, at least for a few seconds, for about a furlong, quarter of a mile to go. So I thought his effort, I mean, considering his inexperience over that kind of track and over a straight mile, I thought was rather commendable.
Yep, definitely agree with that. Did you have any takes on the other Group 1, which was the 2-year-old? Oh, sorry, the Group 2, the Coventry Stakes, which had a very impressive winner as well.
Yeah, I'd concentrate on the Coventry. Aidan O'Brien was supposed to run Albert Einstein in that race, and that horse was dealt a setback. So he ran this horse, and I hope I pronounce his name correctly, Stat.
Yeah.
It starts with a G. But yeah, he couldn't have been any more impressive in the Coventry. I mean, he won for fun. Looks like a physically strong horse running smack down the middle of the track and won impressively by a couple of lengths, so going a straight 6 furlongs. So I don't know how soon Albert Einstein's going to come back to the races this summer, but the winner of the Coventry is definitely a 2-year-old to watch.
Hey, what races do we have to look forward to tomorrow, Vance?
The features, the Prince of Waleses at 1.25 miles for older horses. Otherwise, it's a rather low-key card, I think, in general for Royal Ascot week. We also have the Queen Mary for 2-year-old fillies. The Duke of Cambridge filly and mare milers is a rather competitive race. And then the Queen's Vase for St. Ledger hopefuls for 3-year-olds.
And on Thursday, we have She's So Spicy running, I believe.
She's in the Commonwealth Cup, and that's on Friday.
Oh, Friday. Okay, Friday. Well, we look forward to her seeing if she can carry that form. Also want to mention the tournaments on Royal Ascot began today. Had a really good showing. We had 25 players in bright and early this morning, and we'll give a plug to Anthony Rallo, who had a score on the winner in the very last race, kind of saved a lot of bullets for the Copper Horse Stakes, running over 1.75 miles, and made a big win bet on French Master to steal the first place prize. So definitely exciting to watch these players participate in tournaments, and there'll be a tournament on Royal Ascot throughout the meeting all the way up through the big one on Saturday for $500. So if you're into Royal Ascot, be sure to be participating in the tournaments. Fun way to start your morning each and every day of the meeting. Well, that'll put a bow on our edition of the Racing Roundtable. Ashley will be back next week. We'll be back on Thursday to take a look at our best bets and fades of the week and the twinspires jury. And, of course, the Racing Roundtable will be back again on next Tuesday. Thanks so much for joining us, everybody, and we will see you again next time.
When it comes to horse racing, you can never have too much information. With twinspires, you can place your bets with confidence, whether you use handicapping insights like our Brisnet speed ratings, prime power and past performances, the guidance of our experts' top picks, or just choose a name that catches your eye.
Yes!
No matter how you pick your horse, bet with TwinSpires. And now you can race to victory with TwinSpires tournaments.